Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Torelli. I'm the chairman of the Orange County Industrial Development Agency. And today is, Tuesday, February 7th. It's approximately 5:42 p.m. We'll call the meeting to order. We all can please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Tonight is the Governance Committee meeting, we have these periodically to go over governance type related stuff. We called the meeting to order. We'll do roll call.
Yes, Torelli.
Present.
Tamburri.
Present.
Odak.
Present.
Only member, committee member not present is Giovanni Palladino. The only guests here are myself as staff, Bill Fioravanti, and we have Dennis Brady, our AV consultant. That's everyone attended tonight.
Great. The meeting has been properly noticed, I see.
Yes, sir.
Okay, check. We have minutes to approve. The minutes were from
the January 4th.
January 4th meeting. Any questions, concerns, amendments, changes? No. With none, I'll entertain a motion to accept them as presented.
I move.
Thank you, Dr. Odak. Second. Second. Thank you, Dean. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions? Carried unanimously. All right, we'll get into some new business. Tonight we're going to talk about basically a bunch of different things, some cleanup of some wording from previous stuff, and with fee schedule changes or proposed, some bylaws changes and on our application. Some of this stuff we're going to have in committee meeting, and then we're going to bring to the full board for another discussion and eventual hopeful adoption. This is not, we also, as a side, will be in the future be doing a revision to our UTEP policy to make any revisions that we want. And that would come through this committee, go to the full board, then it have to be publicly noticed. And then we'd have to have a public hearing on it. Probably no one would probably opine on it, but if they did, they'd have the opportunity to. And then it would have to come back. So that's more of a 2-month process, but we wanted to get some of this stuff done ahead of time so we wouldn't confuse the two. So that'll be something that we'll look forward in the future. So Bill, I'll hand it over to you for the proposed fee schedule changes and how you'd like to present that.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I think we'll start right with this document I created. It's got the red type on it, which is, of course, first of all, you have this sheet and you've seen this before. We worked on it last month. It's attached to your packet this month, just so you have the latest grade. This, of course, is our comparison of our fee schedule compared to other IDAs in the region and similar to us. Then I created this document, which is really proposed revisions, again, with the red type here. Based upon our discussion at the full board last month, I've made some changes here, some strike-throughs, a couple adjustments, and I'm just looking for a little more discussion at this committee level. And then I expect that because this is an important issue that most members really seem to not have an opinion on, I expect another robust conversation at next Wednesday's full board of directors meeting. But if you're looking at this document, again, with the proposed revisions, I'm going to go item by item. The first is the application fee. You may recall last month, I frankly had this written erroneously. A $5,000 application fee. Applicants would send it to us, and then we would pass through funds to our legal counsel who did the review. We split the fee with them. The suggestion coming from Bousquet Holstein is that we have the applicant, we instruct them to send $2,500 directly to the IDA and directly $2,500 directly to our general counsel or a bond counsel, if it's a bond deal. That way, it's not passing through us. We're not seeing it as pass through on our budget or in our monthly financials. I did, upon your request, check in with both our auditors and our CFO, essentially, and RBT, and they agreed that that's a cleaner way to do it. So that is a suggestion. But I did clarify, I think I had $1,250 or something. I was like, I halved it again. But that's as you see.
So if we adopt this in practice, Bill, I think it would probably be a good business practice for us to at least get a copy of what they've sent, put it in the file. So if they're sending us, whether it's a wire transfer or a check or, whatever mechanism, so that we have proof in our file that one was paid to us, one was paid, and I'll leave that up to staff's discretion.
Copy of the payments, not the invoices, but the copy more so of the payments.
Yeah, more of the payments. I mean, I guess you could do invoices too if you wanted to, but I think it's more about the payments, just so that we don't get to a point where, say we go to a closing or something and something's still owed. We want to, almost like a checklist again. I always use that term, but at least have it in a folder someplace. It could be electronic too. I'm not talking, however you guys want to do it, whether it's paper or electronic.
Well, checklist, I mean, that's the perfect way to put it. I mean, that's, you have it and you mark them off.
And you mark them off.
These items are finished, you sign off on each step along the way. That's the best way. But and then this is obviously a change, but it's not really a change to the fees. It's going to be a change in the application. It'll just describe how it's paid out.
Right. Sure. Okay, that makes perfect sense. And that one's pretty cut and dry. The next one is an annual administrative fee. That's just that the idea was to recoup any costs related to just managing projects that continue, that have to do reporting every month, and we have to follow up with them and such. I had a fee in there. I did take that out since the last one because that was what came in. Some of the feedback is starting to just add these additional fees that were becoming, I think the expression was nickel and diming. And the last thing we want to do is just constantly be banging it out.
Plus the administration for you guys to continue to receive these things.
Exactly. So that was raised about what would the effort be to collect on, this if we're adding it. So so again, based on that feedback right now, I propose removing that fee, but we'll see if there's it's a full board, if there's feedback there. Can I go on to 3 then?
Yeah, please do.
Okay. And 3 being the closing and admin fees. These are critical because these are, a lot of times people only are aware of the application fee, but once the board, let's say, approves incentives for a project, then it has to go to the closing, where really frankly, as I always say, the lawyers do their work to do the legal work to actually close the transaction. Well, that's where the real significant fees come in. We were quoting very heavy legal fees. So from our general counsel or our bond counsel, where it was 1/3 of the IDA fee. We'll get into the IDA fee in a minute, but where now our attorney is really saying that what's reasonable and what she feels her team can commit to is generally quoting between $20,000 and $30,000 in legal fees. So the idea is to rather take out the language that says at least a third of the IDA fee and add the 20 to 30. Actually, that's number 4. 30 to 40, she's saying is most reasonable. So that's the legal fee. Back to us in 3, there are a few items in here. One, we've talked about it for a while, that we have some projects that come to us looking for only, say, sales tax exemption, oftentimes sales tax and mortgage recording tax, but no pilot. We know the pilot is more controversial. The pilot certainly involves greater dollar amount of incentives being awarded, and they're usually costlier to transact for us to work, both on the legal side and real property, things like that. So we're proposing a lower fee just if someone's applying for sales tax exemption and or mortgage recording tax exemption, being 1% of the total benefit. So if they say like a Walgreens who applied for sales tax exemption only on, I think it was $24 million in equipment, the benefit ended up being around $2 million of sales tax being exempted. Well, it would be 1% of that. So it would be a $20,000 fee off $2 million of benefit, rather than what, still could have been a couple $100,000. I realize it means lost revenue to the IDA, but in this analysis, we're trying to strike that balance between making sure that the proper and I think fair revenue or income streams, fees, however you want to look at it, are coming to us, but also balancing that with remaining competitive and not being outpricing ourselves against our competition or other options for them. So that's something we talked about for a while. I do believe in that. There are a few other ways, and you can look at the comparison sheet to see how some other IDAs do it. But this is one of the ways, and I think it just makes sense based upon the way the math works out and the fee that ends up resulting from various size awards of sales tax and such. So that's the 1% there.
So
sure.
While you're on that, obviously we're seeing this become not a norm, but we're seeing this become something that is more common.
Sure.
If we ever changed our pilot schedule, which is what we talk about in the UTEP, that's more on the UTEP on the pilot schedule, where say in certain industries that are probably taking the STE and mortgage recording tax mostly distribution, right? They're opting to go mostly 40, either nothing on the, or as a right through a 45B. If they can do the 485B through most towns, if not all towns.
Right.
If we end up changing UTEP, I know there's a lot of ifs, and we had a UTEP for distribution that mimicked the 485B, do you believe there's much more of a cost for us to do something paperwork-wise, or is it, would it still, adding a pilot schedule and that at the IDA level instead of as of right at the town level, would that eliminate people doing this?
Well, first of all, I think it does create more work. I think there's something to it. It's just because it kind of emulates the 45B, I don't think necessarily reduces the workload on real property, on IDA staff, on council that much. So I do think there is fee there. And I guess that would mean that taking a couple further steps, I probably tend to recommend that if that were the case, someone applying for that, including a 45B equivalent, as it's been called, that I would probably say just say the regular fees that are levied against that, based upon what we normally do. The 1% of the first, this, that, and the other.
But the second part of that then is 1% of the total benefit. So in a example, company comes in, they only want sales and mortgage tax exemption. They're going to get, the fee would be 1% of the total benefit. If they're getting a 485B, is that considered a benefit? In the analysis and calculation?
It is, and I guess what I'm saying is that I think if they get a 45B equivalent, they are not in the category of this first line here, where it's STE and or MRTE.
I'm not saying equivalent. I'm saying they just do it with the town.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay, not through us.
Not through us.
Okay, because that's another conversation that I'd like to get back to. It is more for that meat and potatoes UTEP discussion, but I think we should have a 45B equivalent, if for nothing else, to commit the applicant to local labor. I think it's worth us doing that.
So if they do, that's the third question. Does STE and MRTE commit them to local labor?
Actually, it does. It does. We've been through this with Sue Katzoff. It says
because of our labor policy, the way that it is.
It says if you, which of course could be tweaked with the language there, but it says if you receive IDA benefits, you have to
receive one of them. You can just receive a mortgage recording take.
Correct.
It doesn't specify.
It doesn't. So unless we change that
well,
language,
we didn't see those types of examples in the past where people are only doing a certain ones.
Agreed.
Could they do?
You're right.
Could they go for the 45B? Isn't one of the projects they do that after the fact, or they have to do that?
45B, obviously I've never gone through it myself and we haven't dealt with it. It was done at a town or municipal level. But my understanding of looking into it is that it's actually after you get a certificate of occupancy. That's when you're able to actually go.
Check a box it's literally, it's not even a formal application, I don't think. I think it's just
the form you fill out.
It's a form you fill out.
And just different taxing jurisdictions can opt out. That's also a way I didn't quite understand it fully, but when I knew school districts opted out, well, they opt out for their share of the taxes there. And municipalities themselves can opt out for their share, say the town portion of. I have further clarity on that now. So, and I think really off the top of my head, it's the school districts only of Monroe and Goshen that have opted out. So most other communities around Orange County, the 45B is available as of right to applicants. Yeah, so, but you're right. But back to your question, if they got a 45B fee through, say, the town of New Windsor, let's say, and they came to us only for sales tax, I think they would be eligible for this first line that I'm proposing of fees. Yes, there's added benefit, but it's not coming from us. So
we wouldn't calculate that.
I don't believe so.
Yeah.
I don't believe so.
As long as we stay consistent and we know that we're doing it,
Yeah.
I believe that. Because if it's not a benefit that we're providing,
Exactly.
then we should, we don't calculate this benefit on ESD grants,
Exactly.
or on discretionary member items, or
Right.
on, you name the program. We don't calculate. It's only on
Correct.
something we do.
Yep, and that's exactly how we assess fees.
So you could have a STE or a mortgage tax and then apply for the 45
Correct.
in the end once you receive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But not IDA benefits and 45B. That wouldn't make sense.
Right. Yep. So that's what that is for that piece. The next one is bond issuance only, which we have not had either. Again, we've just based on the size of the project. This is more based upon the bonds that they're actually issuing, that we are issuing. And again, I did base this upon looking at some others, but it really seemed fair. The first $10 million of bond issuance, 1% of that value. For the next, if it's beyond that, the next 10 to 25 million is another 0.5%, and anything above 25 million, another 0.25% of that. So again, it's just focused on the specifics of what the application would be, and it's apples and oranges. This is an orange here with bond as opposed to pilots and such. So it's using something we think is a more appropriate fit to assess the fee on that.
And some bonds will come through IDA, some bonds will go through funding corporation, depending upon.
Most bonds that I've encountered, most go through OCSC.
OCSC.
Yeah, most are issued through OCSC.
In Bill, if somebody just has the sales tax, is the legal fees, and I'm jumping a little bit, but is the legal fee still 30 to 40, or how does that work? Or there is no?
Typically, that's how she's looked at it. In some cases, they could be a little less, between 20 and 30, as I was referring to before, for some projects. But generally, I think you're looking about 30 and change. That's it, and that's how it's been already with the project.
So
scale.
If we're going to jump that real quick,
yeah,
that's the issue that I think that this board historically has had I'll say a liability to. We were charging 1/3 of the IDA closing fee, a minimum of $30,000. How much was the board keeping for themselves, and how much did it actually cost to pay for the legal stuff? So if we're paying for the legal stuff up front at the application fee, and this is a true pass-through, like these legal fees, we're coming up with an estimate, or we're going to come up with a fee. Does the whole amount go to the attorneys, or do they bill us and then we pay them?
They bill them directly. So just to clarify, when they're closing, like what we just have with Royal Wine, that is closed transaction. It's done, which is, as I said in my note to the board, a great milestone that shows that the project's going to happen, which is what we're here for, for sure. That closing, we charge the IDA fee, which is that old 1% of the first 2 million, and then on manufacturing, and then 0.5% of beyond that, and that's what we came up with. I believe that fee was $535,000. That is 100% of the IDA. It's paid directly to us. In addition to that, that's where the legal fee used to be 1/3 of that. So in that case, it would be $150,000 in legal fees. That never came, nor does it now come directly to us or go through us. It goes right to the attorney. So our prior counsel, in some cases, was charging, again, over $100,000 on a transaction, where our counsel now says she doesn't think she's ever going to exceed $40,000. But yes, to answer your question, the IDA fee, that larger closing fee, that's directly to us, doesn't involve the attorney at all. And then the legal fee is directly billed to the applicant when we actually close. And by the way, you alluded to that application fee, the legal side of that, the $2,500 for them. I've checked with Bousquet Holstein on this to make sure that anything they're charging us, or typically the applicant on the closing, to make sure that it doesn't cover any of the work that they did that had to do with reviewing the application and getting it to that point. That's all supposed to be covered under the $2,500. She's confirmed that. Kelly's looked through billing to make sure that we're not kind of getting double charged on that.
So when we talk about this legal fee of $30,000 to $40,000, I don't know if we want to have a range, or we just want to say a certain amount. Because I don't want to leave it up to ambiguity. I mean, it's tough to, you can put it on an application, it's going to be between $30,000 to $40,000. But I think we could always revisit it if it's not enough, but maybe we come up with an exact amount, right?
How do you quote that in here? And by the way, the last piece to fully answer the question you asked a minute ago is to say that on this piece, 30 to 40 or whatever it is being billed on direct hours, meaning it's not like, hey, we give you a budget, and even if we came in short, we're going to charge you that. No. Sue Cassup, in this case, charges based upon X number of hours that she and her team spend on closing that transaction. Again, not in reviewing the application, preparing for public hearing, preparing the final resolution, but in everything it takes to close that transaction. So it's billed whatever. It's going to be different.
So it's going to be different for each project, depending upon the efficiency or the effectiveness of the council that we have.
True. We could put in there, as we've had it.
Or and not to exceed.
If some projects, if she does exceed based on hours to be in it, we could put in what I was going to say, just like in some of the RFPs we got from council when we did bond council, we could put their actual legal fees, X dollars per hour for the attorney, X dollars per paralegal, so they see the rate at which we're being billed. Those would be true, those numbers, but it would depend upon the amount of hours for any of that personnel that's spent on it for what the bill would be.
Okay.
That's my concern about
Because
labeling it, but not
okay.
secondary.
Thank
I'm
you for the
sorry.
No, that's okay. No, because, back to exactly what you had said. So we're looking at, the efficiency of our council, obviously, is definitely something to look at, but also the efficiency of the applicant.
Sure.
I mean, if they send in all this information, if that's all correct, and they're gonna look at it 5 times and mark it up and go back and forth and back and forth, well, they should, they're entitled to charge them, and they should have the documents filled out properly.
You're absolutely right, and I won't say who, but Sue had already made that comment to me off the record that she's quoted a certain amount for one of our applicants, and then by the time it closed and it was so labor intensive, she said, I wish I hadn't quoted that, because she actually did cap her amount, even though it exceeded that, because she had quoted it to them and didn't want to stand by that for our sake and for her sake. But it was one where it was, I don't think, problematic. Some are less familiar, some are just, some people, I would say, kind of problem children in a way where it's just that nothing's easy. And we've already had that once. All great projects, all succeeded, in closing, but that some are more labor intensive on the legal.
Maybe we do, subject to attorney fee schedule. We give those dollar amounts, right? Because that can change. I mean, if we ever get different counsel or if their amounts change, and then a typical project, we see a typical project ranging between $30,000 to $40,000 in reasonable cost in reasonable legal costs for most projects. So they can almost guess and see from the application, because they're going to do a back of the napkin cost benefit analysis. Should I do this application or not?
Yeah.
They're going to hit this schedule, but I'd rather err on more transparency because we know what they do. They bid on what they
can quote that.
Yeah,
exactly.
You can quote that.
No, I think that's a good idea. I think it would really work.
Yeah, and then you could put in what the fee schedule will be above and beyond after the fact, and you can always plug that in for whatever you don't have to make it. You can change that as the application. You go down a road, you don't have to just change the amount. If the amounts change, and then just keep it fair for everybody.
Yeah,
and you make sure you're do your paperwork correctly so it goes through.
Yeah, for sure. And just to be clear, just so you know how we. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm looking at the comparison with the Dutchess County. Yeah, we said that PH cost. But legal fees, I'm comparing that, I'm looking at that, I'm looking at ours.
At cost, which is exactly what we're talking about. It costs plus the expenses, including public hearing costs. So putting an advertisement out for the public hearing for proper notice, preparing the resolutions for that, any of that, it just included in whatever the attorney, whatever hours they incur. That's really all. They're saying exactly what the chairman's message is. Say the fees are what the legal work that's put into it at X dollars per hour.
And they pay that directly to the attorneys.
They
It's
do.
not a pass-through.
It is not at all. Yes, confirm that.
So obviously, same as one, at the end, we should have free and clear, or everything's been paid, type check from both parties or whatever, just something for a record type thing. But if you want to amend this bill for the full board, I would just add the current attorney's fee schedules for both regular attorneys and for bond counsel. Right? I think it's two different.
It is.
And you can separate them in a little chart or little graph or, however you think is the best way to do it.
Absolutely. Okay. And then refinancing bonds. Frankly, in the first issue version of this I sent you, I had that down under other miscellaneous fees. I put it back here because it's really more about a closing fee. I almost kind of X'd it out based upon the board's feedback last month about maybe too many fees coming in there. But I thought that was one that should be considered again under this section where we've already had a deal like this. Mount St. Mary College did just that. They refinanced their already issued tax exempt bonds from the IDA. And this would provide a lower fee for that, frankly, to refinance.
On this one, I think this is the one I potentially spoke out against, or was questioning, I'll say, not against, because this would be on a refinance of a bond that we've already issued.
Correct.
So we've already got, say, this above fee schedule. So I don't know if we want to do a percentage on this one. The reason being, it could be someone refinancing $5 million in bonds, or $500 million in bonds, or $5 billion in bonds, still the same paper. I don't think it's dependent upon the value of the bond.
Mm.
With the first one, I mean, you can almost say that for all bonds, but I understand the reasoning behind it. On a refinance, you're basically doing it either for longer term or for lower rates, or difference, or a change in it's usually just a change. It's more of a paperwork thing. So I don't know if we want to go flat fee on this. I don't know.
$1,000 or something, or $2,500
I don't know.
even.
I mean, bond paperwork is probably more intense than most, because you're usually dealing with another third party, who's buying the bonds, and I'm sure there's all kinds of bond regulations that I'm not going to even profess to know about.
But again, this is IDA fee. It's nothing to do with the attorney yet, correct? This is an IDA fee.
This is IDA fee, correct.
So you can have some paperwork, but not.
Yeah, but we don't charge legal fees for refinance.
Not right now, no.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when our counsel does a refinance, the bill comes to us, and then we use this fee to help pay for that.
Mm. I have to verify that, actually.
Yeah, let's double check that, because if they're not paying, well, no. I may have misspoke, because usually bonds don't go through our general counsel, they go through our bond counsel.
Correct.
And bond counsel may directly bill them. I think that's what they did in the past.
Oh, I'm quite certain they did for Mount St. Mary College. I'll check this out.
An example.
Exactly, yeah. So if so, then maybe under legal fees, bond counsel fees would apply for refinancing there.
Mm.
So that would, we might have to add that asterisk down there, because legal fees could be just it could be for regular stuff and for bond, however we should state that down there. This would be our portion of what we would get from the bond finance. This is what we're talking about now. So in that instance, we already have gotten a fee based upon the original or the initial bond issuance. I'm just thinking out loud, like 0.5%, right? Some people, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, are going to probably, I hate to use this example, but I'll refinance my mortgage if I can get 1.5, 2 points lower. Well, if I'm going to have to pay 0.5% to get that, now it's not 1.5 to 2 points, it's so you're eating into their ability to refinance.
That's a good point.
So I'm thinking, because that delta is not as big as the initial. They need the bond issuance in the beginning for the project.
Right.
They're eligible for it by industry classification or type. This is just for saving money.
Like you said, right, the financial transaction.
So I don't know if 0.5 percentage point will it might eat into their savings too much, especially because I don't think there's a difference between a $5 million, $50 million, $500 million, $5 billion bond issuance. It's just, it's a lot more zeros, but I don't think there's a lot more work.
I agree with that, but I think there should be at least maybe two. I mean, one if it's under, and one if it's that large, they're a little bit more. I mean, because I'm not substantially, but I agree with the concept.
Yeah, because I hate to see like a small project. I don't know. We'll say I'll give a for instance. Say there's a health institution that's a not-for-profit. They do a bond issuance. We do it all, blah blah blah, and then they want to refinance it, but it's going to cut into that. Well, maybe maybe we tier it with them. Maybe anything, and I might even be okay from 0 to X amount of million. We don't charge a fee for it, and anything over something, then there's more of a delta there. They'll be saving more money. They'll be able to pay us. I don't know. I mean, I'll leave it all.
I think there should be some sort of fee, right? I mean, because if we're going to knock it down from 25, we're talking about substantial savings, which I agree with 100%. But there's going to be some work to be done.
Yeah. Oh, there is.
So I think, some sort of tiered, I think. But
Tiered with just percentages, you thinking?
I don't know. I'm thinking tiered flat fee. I don't know. I mean, does anybody else, I read the whole thing, but I don't remember. Does anybody else have a flat fee or bonds?
well, is there even, is it even on here for reissuing? I mean, 'cause that's for something very specific.
Very
Well,
specific.
But with
It's all
the rate and
percentage based on
everything,
the
who
size.
knows what's gonna
Yeah,
happen.
yeah.
Now, the flat fee you're talking about is for everyone then, every.
Yeah, in this instance, for refinancing bonds, instead of eating into their, I'll say, savings by a percentage, maybe it's a flat fee, and the flat fee to us could be $10,000,
Right.
$20,000, I don't know
Not
what
based on
that,
a percentage either.
yeah,
5,000.
because we already got the percentage on the original issue. So they've already been feed by us, in that. This is it's more paperwork. It's not a new project per se. It's way that they're gonna save money by lowering a rate or by lengthening a term, if that's even possible, or by changing something else, or assigning it, or, whatever refinance is in that.
Yeah.
But I don't know if 0.5 is, maybe it'd be a flat fee.
Okay. I'll speak to our bond counsel.
Yeah.
Chris Cannon about that. It's a good opportunity for a discussion about that.
Yeah, because I believe they're gonna be taking care of that, the legal side. This is for our
This is our fee.
This is our fee
It is.
for the privilege to get this done.
Yep.
Type of thing.
But to your point about the legal fees, I'll also talk to him about his rates and this, that, and the other, because
We might have
as
to
you
list
said,
that there, and then also have an asterisk, also include bond
exactly. And he's right.
financing, refinancing, yeah.
This, the sheet that you gave me, that I put it in there, Mount St. Mary, City of Newburgh, tax exempt bonds, am I correct, 56 million?
In bonds, yeah. And I think we charged kind of our 1% deal on that.
And
I don't
then,
recall
I don't know
what
what
the
the refinancing was, I don't know how long they had it, but when we were talking about refining, this is a great example, we were talking about refinancing, how it could have been 50, could have been 45, I don't know what they had paid on it.
Yeah.
Let's put it this way, I'm sure it was over 20-some million, I would imagine, so
Yeah.
I guess that's an example of.
I'm going to research that one too.
Yeah.
Because that's obviously.
No, I mean,
good we had an
it should be
example
a
of it.
fee. I just don't know if 0.5 is the right one. And a flat fee is an opportunity here to simplify it.
Without significantly cutting into.
Well, so this is
whole
getting into the savings,
motivation to do
and I
it.
don't think there's a difference between big bond issuance and small bond issuance,
Yeah.
because it's paperwork,
I'm
Where the
gonna
initial
ask
one
that too.
is a little bit more detailed. It's a brand new project. They're using that as a mechanism to get it built or to finance it. This is just to save money.
For example, a 0.5%, right, on 50 million, it's $250,000. I mean,
That's exactly why we're looking at this. For those. So I think that could be, keeping. us
we're smiling about it, but I mean,
But we also have to watch,
that's what we're doing.
that's what, we have, our goal is to be self-sufficient, self-sustainable, so we have to have some source of revenue. We don't want to cut off our nose to spite our face. We don't want to miss projects, or our projects go elsewhere where it's going to be less expensive for them. So there's a give and take, and we may do something way to one side that we may have to come back to. So just because we do this once doesn't mean we can't do it again.
Absolutely.
We just said when we do it, it has to be fair for everybody from that point moving forward, type of thing. But it feels like there should be a flat fee one too.
I hear where you're coming from there.
With the flat fee now, how do we come up with a flat fee? I mean, what?
Well, you can do it, I think, a couple of ways, Dr. Oda. I think you do it based upon competitive analysis of what others are charging for refinancing. That's one way. Another way is to say, what type of benefit should we get as an organization for something that we've already received the benefit for when they did the original issuance? So it's not, I don't think it should be as much as we originally got, but it can't be zero either, so there's got to be someplace in between. I don't know what that number is, but I don't think it should depend upon the size of the bond issuance. you know, because I worry that, it doesn't treat everybody the same. It's really the same, product, I'll say. It's really the same product. When you want to refinance, it's the same paperwork, whether there's a lot of zeros or a couple zeros. But I don't know. I mean, I'm really open to it, but it's just, let's ask Chris if he knows of anybody that does a flat fee type thing. And obviously we have to do the rates. So,
yeah. All right. That's great. Definitely look into that. Come back next Wednesday, more information there. And in the same section 3, sector-based fees, as we talked about many times, we're going to wait till we do our full review and revision of the UTEP for us to decide what are the sectors we want to incentivize. And then we can base fees that can be more attractive based upon the sectors that we want to attract. That's the way it was set up, but it could be very different fundamentally.
We'll talk offline on that, Bill, but when we do that discussion, obviously you're going to have a document in front of us,
Yes.
We'll mark it up, this and that. I'd like to also see when we do that, the analysis of, all right, these are our sectors. We've had X amount of projects in this sector, and X amount of projects, and you know what, we're not getting any in this sector because we're not competitive. Or they're not you know, so, and then any new sector. So let's, you know, think a little bit more creatively there, because I worry that they might have reined it in a little bit too much on some of them. And maybe not enough on another, you know. So, and we also have to see what our competition is doing, obviously. And we want to be as competitive as possible.
But I think in part your point is that applicants vote with their feet. So let's see what's been coming in as a result of the way things have been structured. Let's see what we're getting and see what we're not getting. Factor that in our decision. Okay, that's great.
Cool. That's a whole different type of, that's a meeting up once itself.
Yep, and then we'll probably talk in March, April timeframe where I think we start to dig into that.
Okay.
Legal fees I mentioned, and you give me feedback. I'll look at the rates for each of our council and look at proposing something that's more based on that. And moving to the next page 5, miscellaneous fees. This is where you'll see some strike-throughs based upon certainly member Green's feedback, but I think that the board, no one contradicted what he was saying about, hey, are we at this point after all this analysis, are we adding too many fees? So the strike-throughs demonstrate my effort to scale back a little bit. Amendments and assignments, the assignments being the important piece. We've done it already as a board 3 or 4, if not more times. There's work done. The board takes time to do it. The staff has to prepare for it. There's a legal side to it. I think we charged one, because our attorney got us saying we could, I asked the question, I'm seeing how much work this is, should we be charging it? You can choose to, you know, levy a fee that you think is fair. I think we charged maybe $2,500 for one of our more recent assignments. So I did scale that back a little bit, but it is one that, again, when we do assignments, we see there's work involved. A flat fee for that, I think, is very reasonable. Really.
When we talk assignments and amendments, that's usually done in one meeting with us, or is that something that is public hearing worthy? I don't remember.
Not public hearing worthy.
No. So it's usually done in one meeting, or they'll talk to you, then you'll present it, and we'll vote on it. And
it's certainly less work at the board level than it is behind the scenes. And, you know, I'm usually notifying you about these and background on it. But yeah, so we've done a couple, for example, Crystal Home Healthcare to Hemis, and the Hampton Inn in Newburgh, from Milano to a new group. But I can tell you there's a lot of.
We did determination for IBM to that one. So
exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't see there being an issue with charging a fee for something like that.
I mean, there is some work. I scaled it back to 1,500. I think that's more than fair. But again, I understand if the board says, hey, we don't want to knock anyone for any of these things. Extension of an inducement, that was another one I got from other areas. We haven't had that yet. I don't see, I feel the same way, so I did scratch that one. A termination fee, my thinking, I left that in at $1,000. We did one recently for Hampton Park on Old Neelytown Road. Frankly, my thinking there is, we went through the process of going through, you know, the whole analysis and awarding them, and then it doesn't happen. And then there's work for us to cancel it. So I don't know. I could see both sides of this, frankly, where.
You think that's collectible if someone is like on a project that's not happening?
I think we've received that on the one that we did so far, but that is a factor. I think that is a.
But they paid their application fee at first.
They did, and they generally paid all the legal fees and everything as they should have. That meaning, in order for it to be something subject to be terminated, it had to have been closed.
That's been closed. That was going to be my next question. So I went through it all the way through the closing. Either got built or it didn't. If it got built, they want to terminate for such and such a reason.
Yeah.
Or if it.
More so if the project doesn't happen or they're
More
going to
so.
sell the property or whatever it might be, and not looking to assign it.
Yeah.
So I really could go both ways. I could present it next Wednesday with a strike through, but if, I probably will touch on all these anyway. But again, they closed and they paid us, if so. There's just work to be done there, and I don't know, it's probably not a deterrent having that fee in there. I'm just saying, hey, if they pay $1,000, so hey, let's rethink whether or not we want to cancel this. So that's not applicable. So that one too, I could see scratching out. But I kind of, I thought both ways about it. Assumption of outstanding bonds, that was another one that was, maybe superfluous. We redlined that. And then the last one, I had them both redlined at first, fee for late annual reports. This is all about, we're going through it right now. I think at least you, Mr. Chairman, probably saw my email. I think everyone did, where I reached out to our auditors just at this point. They've been here for a week. We've been giving them a lot of information. Okay, tell us if you're going to be on time, because we don't want a similar problem to last year. And one of the things they came back to say was all the board questionnaires, which are pretty much all in now, and the responses to our what we call confirmation letters to all the projects. How much sales tax have you expended? How many jobs have you created? This, that, and the other. We reply, we depend on those. Again, if we don't get all the responses, our audit really isn't complete, or to be completed would be late. So my point is, the only reason to put something like that is if it is a deterrent for someone being late, or at least something to threaten them. So the only point I want to make is, you see, I scratched off the initial one that they didn't meet our first deadline, but I included a fee if they don't meet really our drop dead deadline, which would affect our audit. I kept the fee in, but I lowered it to $500. Because what I want you to consider, and I'll say this to the full board, is if we didn't add a fee here and somebody didn't comply and respond in time to allow us to have our audit be completed on time, the only course of action is to recapture their benefits, all or in part. And I'm trying to give us an out, or at least a deterrent, at least a threat. By the way, you're going to get hit with this $500 or $1,000 if you don't respond, just as an added thing for Marty, Kelly, or myself to be able to, frankly, threaten them with, just to get them to do what they need to do. If we don't have that, we can't use that. We have to threaten them with recapturing their benefits, which is a road we generally, I'm going to assume, unless they're really defaulted on what their promises were, we generally don't want to do that. So I scratched it out and I said, let me include one at our very drop deadline date, just as, again, to give us the potential to threaten and say, hey, we need this information for our audit, you're bound to this. We're going to charge you if you don't.
February 24th is our drop dead submission date, because ours are due March 1st.
Our audit Paris reporting deadline is the end of March, so March 31st. But what we need to report to Paris at the time is a board-approved completed audit, which I scale back to the date that I get the auditors, which is our audit committee meeting. We'll have finance after that. We'll have the full board meeting where it would be approved, but we have to have the audit ready for March 9th. So you're talking, 15 days or less if they put us in that position.
I think it's necessary to have the fee there. I mean, the penalty there, because knowing people, if it hits their pockets, right, they would respond.
And in your application, they'll know that this is in there.
Absolutely.
They'll know it's in there. You let them know, like you say, go back to the checklist that you described, everybody's aware of it.
Exactly.
And you send it to them, well in advance. Make sure you get a response so we don't have the issue. Like, for example, please tell me that you've received it, so there's not an issue with that. So it's not a bad email or something like that. But I don't have a problem with you doing it in the first, because I don't like to leave any of that to the last. It makes me crazy. So and then you're under the gun. I mean, they have the benefits. They're supposed to do this stuff. It's part of the benefits. I think you should leave it until you get it on a timely manner that we can do our reporting, because then it falls back on us.
Is it a little more comfortable with the $500 there, or do you think $1,000 in this case is more appropriate?
Well, how many of these do we have? How many people report?
So right now, I think we have about 42. responses were way.
Are any of them really, really small, or are they all medium to large size companies? I say that because 500 or 1,000 to a medium or large size company is not going to make a difference. You know, meaning we might as well keep it at 1,000. Where if we have a couple small ones, you know, I don't think we have a lot of small ones.
Probably the smallest one I can think of is the Castle Fun Center. You know, it's a family-owned business. They're also not small time. I mean, they're a significant operation.
And I just went there and I spent $400 on laser tag, and it was ridiculous. And got beat by little girls. Go figure.
That's probably the smallest, but 9 out of 10, they're larger organizations where that wouldn't make a dent. It's just
I'm not worried about that. I'm more worried about hurting those small ones.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
I don't think we have small ones. I'm okay with having the fee. Whether you want to have an earlier date than February 24th, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with $1,000. I mean, or, you know, it would be nice if all of our miscellaneous fees could be at the same amount. I don't know if we'll ever get to that point, but like, should, you know, amendments to assignments be 1,500, termination be 1,000, late be 500, you know, it starts getting to be, you know, maybe they all should be at 1,000, maybe they all should be at a, you know, 1,500, or, you know, I don't know. I mean, 1,500 for reports probably.
Yeah, I think it is too.
But what do you guys think? Definite fee, right?
Definitely. I personally think it should be the earlier date.
Okay.
So.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, they shouldn't wait till, you know.
Like it's literally the last.
they know they have to do this, you know.
Yeah.
And they're reporting for the fiscal year previous. So
Correct.
So they have a month and 2 weeks to February 14th. So they have 6 weeks to come up with how much they spent in sales tax and how much people they work. They know this stuff.
Sure.
And plenty of them have questions.
QuickBooks, you know,
Exactly. Maybe a quarter of them reach out with questions. We're very responsive. Marty and Kelly are terrific. I jump in as need be. So there's no excuse, frankly. You know, like I said, the information is easy enough to compile, and we notify them as early as we can. We got them out even earlier, a couple weeks.
So originally they're due by the end of the year, right? Or are they due by the 14th?
No, we can't even really get it out there. It's we have to work with the auditor on it, and you know, and with Harris Beach preparing our Paris reports. Generally, they can't go out until this year for the most part. I think generally, like we moved it up to be early mid-January. I think we first sent them out. Maybe early January. I think they started to go out.
So mid-February. So why don't we change that to like the 15th? If we're, you know, let's as a practice target to have them out by January 15th on our end and back in 30 days, you know, so the 15th of February, you know, something like that. If you want to play with the date.
I don't mean to belabor this, but I just, this one part I'll restate is the reason that after all this analysis and feedback about, you know, not overdoing it with the fees, that date is, we essentially with, say it's February 24th and it's $1,000. That is only to bang them with that if they actually don't comply. So it's the latest date, but we're only charging them if they don't do it in time for us to do what we need to do. You know what I'm saying? So that's why we had 2 dates, because the first one I want to say, all right, we're going to encourage you to get it in time, and if we don't, give a smaller fee. But that it probably is too much. So if it's just one, again, mostly my motivation is so that you have some recourse. We have some recourse beyond or before recapture of benefits.
Whatever you think, then.
I'm not going to believe it. Yeah.
You know, I don't mean to, but I want you to know that because they could still get it to us, and it doesn't screw us up at all, and it's before February 24th. And if they do that, I don't want to reward that or encourage it, but if they do comply in time,
So give it to you on the 23rd.
I'm not going to charge them. I just want to threaten them and hold them. If you don't, you get hit with $1,000.
Give it to you
On the 24th, for example, like, we're fine. That's kind of what I mean. If they do it, even if it took us 5 times to remind them or whatever, if they get it to us by the 24th, it's not going to cost us. It's not going to mess with our audit. We don't want everything last minute.
As of February 24th?
I think so.
If it's not received, if it's received after the 24th.
Pardon the expression, but it just gives us that bullet in the gun. If they are threatening to not comply and do what we need them to do, and it will mess with our audit, then I'm gonna threaten all along. Look, you're gonna get hit with $1,000.
No, would they receive reminders from us?
Yes, we're very diligent about that. Kelly and Marty do a great job with that. They check in with Julie Marshall from Harris Beach, who's managing the Paris reporting side of it. She has a real expertise. Checking on all these on a case-by-case basis. giving them whatever information they need. If they say, hey, somebody else needs to get the information, we do all of that. You can really count on us for that. You feel really have a lot of confidence in the staff is. Because we are, I'll tell you myself, and we carry this over the whole administration, we have the IDA's interest and the county's interest at heart. But I personally, for example, I'm a very, customer focused person. So I want to make sure we're not making it difficult. That's why I appreciate this analysis. It's too much. So we are making every effort to help them comply and do what they need to do. You can have faith in that. I'll tell you that. That's the last on that. Last piece is number 6, which is about local labor monitoring. We talked about this last month. There were some questions about, all right, this is how we actually, when they close, we also, like we did with Boral Wine, they paid us our IDA closing fee. They paid the legal fees, and they also paid us in advance for their local labor monitoring. And the way we assess that upfront charge is based upon the project size. It's not foolproof, as we know, but we looked at this. We looked at how it pans out and how many projects we charged X amount, how many do we have to rebill, or how many do we have to refund. It seems to me, from my analysis, as close as you're going to get, frankly. It's pretty accurate, believe it or not. Do we refund some? Yes, because we give them every penny back that we didn't expend. And we, of course, ask them.
So this is refundable.
Totally. So I think all that would matter is if these amounts were meaning we're collecting far too much in the front end and giving most of it back, or the reverse, we're just constantly rebilling because we don't ask for enough. This schedule, so to speak, tends to be getting us to pretty close to really what they end up spending on local labor monitoring. So I'm suggesting we don't change that, but we also talked about adding an administrative fee, that there is staff work to be done every year related to labor monitoring. If it extended past a year, I'm now down to reduce it to $500 charge. But I also understand and could appreciate if someone says, if they're doing the local labor monitoring, we don't have to charge them our own fee on that. That could be an extra fee. But I'm going to tell you it's reasonable. But if we're looking at it like, hey, let's try and limit how much we're doing here, how much we're, keep using that expression, dinging or banging the client.
I really don't think some of these, listen, I understand like 500 here or there, but I mean, I don't think that these projects, this is going to, somebody's going to say, well, I'm not going to do this project. I might have to do another 500 or whatever. But because we don't want it to, for me, I just don't want it to be costing, the IDA funds, if we use it to try to gain more projects in any way, the board spends on spending money, but.
Sure.
So, yeah. I don't like the variability of the based upon project dollar amounts. It doesn't have a variable here for time. We don't typically know, limited knowledge of the time up front. Yeah, so there's not a typical, so the variable of time is not in this, and the variable of number of people that you're monitoring is not in.
Sure.
Those two we're really monitoring. We're monitoring and making sure that the 85, at least a minimum, 85% of the people that show up to work there in the construction phase of this are local. I understand it's probably the best practice. It's just weird to me. I'm not against that. We can keep it this way. We can always change it in the future. It's just, and.
Any thoughts on alternatives for that? Or?
Well, I don't know if a breakdown is less. Do we need to have all these breakdowns? The difference between a $5 million job and a $15 million job, okay. But the difference between a $15 and a $25 million job?
Right.
It's not that big of a difference. It's either,
So it could be like this, but with not quite as many.
Maybe like, I don't know. I've seen $5 million jobs take 3 years. I've seen $50 million jobs take 3 months. I don't know. I'm not going to advocate for changing it. It's I don't know if it's the best, but
okay.
You think we're competitive with this?
I don't know if I look at it in that same way, because kind of like what we're talking about with the legal fees, we're only charging them what we're being charged by the labor monitoring company for the monitoring they do. If they don't do monitoring, they don't charge, and the client isn't billed. So it's really just how much are we collecting on the front end.
Yeah.
And I think, look, Mike, maybe overstating it, but your guess is as good as mine in terms of getting the right amount up front. You coming up with a structure, a schedule, something to. I again, with all due respect, I think this level. I understand everything you're saying. I think going by project capital expenditure probably works as well as anything. So, and again, we did that analysis. If it looked like we were refunding tons of money to every single project, then I would say, all right, we need to recalibrate this. But it seems to be.
We also didn't have a great response to the RFP on the labor monitoring stuff, right? It was only a couple, right?
With 5.
We had 5? Okay, maybe I was wrong.
Yeah.
Okay.
Including Loki Brill.
Because
I think we had 5, yeah.
Eventually, this board has to make a decision on where we want to go with this. I'm not saying we need to do it today, even at the next meeting. Eventually, it gets to the point where, okay, is it costing our projects too much by using a third party? Or do we bring that in-house and hire another person just to do that?
Mm-hmm.
And that's something we'll have to face in the future. We'll do it in a work session type thing. We'll do a cost benefit. Here's all the fees. Here's all the types of projects. And we've collected, they've been charged, I don't know, they've been charged $150,000.
Yep.
Right. Well, we could hire a person for less than that. And that person's sole job would be labor monitoring.
Yep.
They would, so.
I think at another.
It's also nice to have
we'll be in a position to be able to have.
It's also nice to have a third party. It's also nice to have a third party that you can rely on to go do that. So, not something today, but it's something to think about in the future. Do we want to ever bring this in house or not? So I'm sure some people do it in house.
And I'm going to wheel it back to your very first comment is checklist. So we have good checklists for these projects to be filling out. They just have to be monitored at once. So
what's the
frequency? They give you the information.
Yeah.
People, whatever, and it's a
IDs,
report, whatever
signed
off on. Now you're evaluating that report and verifying the report as it may be going out and trying to create it yourself.
Yeah. Understood.
All right, so I'm gonna look at Dr. Arnold.
Yeah, I'm looking at that too. The difference is here. The way I'm looking at it depends on how much work you put, depending to the big project, paperwork, everything analysis is more, right? That's what it is here. A small project, you spend less time on that, right? That's, the way I'm looking at it.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm gonna look into the things you asked me to. I'll revise this proposal, propose revisions again based upon the feedback here. And of course, we all understand this. It's open to further change at the board level. People could disagree with what you're saying.
But basically, we're moving forward with bringing this to the full board for consideration for the schedule fees. You're going to amend them a little bit, and we'll have a full discussion.
Would you like to vote on that? I don't know. We're going to bring this to the board.
We're going to bring it to the board no matter what.
There isn't a firm recommendation.
No, there's not a firm recommendation. So unless we had a firm recommendation, unless it's cut and dry.
Sure. Fair enough. There's no need for that. Okay. All right. Next item on the agenda is the bylaws.
Yep.
So that is in your packet as well, right in the next few pages. I will go through these for the most part item by item, but I'll try and distinctly describe what the proposed changes. Pretty self-explanatory. I'll say again that this is nothing really substantive. It's mostly cleaning up, removing old titles that existed in there, like managing director, like chief operating officer, some other things that just do not apply right now. And also things that Bousquet-Holstein, our general counsel, felt were just extra unnecessary, more specific than is needed to be. It's not in any effort to be less transparent. We all know that. That's our driving principle. It's not trying to be more vague. It's just not being overly specific in some areas. But so I'm just going to go through here item by item. I'll move as quickly as possible. Please stop me at any moment.
That was my only question.
Yeah.
So the attorney made some of these changes with your input.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
Exactly.
That's true.
Exactly. I told her what our objectives were, the things that stuck out to me and to us as being, lack of a better word, problematic, of concern. She took all those into consideration. She reviewed the rest and certainly pointed out some things that I wouldn't necessarily have touched on, but all make sense to me. So I'm just going to run through. Please stop me or slow me down at any point. Section 3, Office of the Agency. She mostly took out the address there and any specifics specifying where it has to be. One, she did say it doesn't need to be specified. In Orange County is enough. And she knows that we're looking at a potential location change. So she suggests making the change as written. And if we wanted to add in an address again after we have a new home, we can do so. But that's all that is. Section 4 is the mission statement, and you see she adds that little verbiage, empower the agency, just to clarify that. You see some of what she took out, basically, and adding a little verbiage like and other economic benefits. You see the red lines in there, mentions of accelerator being removed now. Anything to do with that? Let's see, that's mostly the first page of this. Again, with the second page of it,
I can't believe some of this stuff was even in there.
yeah, I don't really understand why some of this language is in here.
I think it was self-serving.
It certainly could be. And she tried to clarify in here, as you see information about the board members, some of the specifics there. And then there's below that, what's underlined in blue, you see that the strike through in red, eliminating specific mentions to managing director, chief operating officer, CFO being required. If it's in here, they're required. Even if we may have a CFO again someday, or we may have a COO, having them in the bylaws now when we don't have that means we're out of compliance with our own bylaws. So it's removing those to just give us a little more leeway to operate the way we are, which is certainly, what's the word I'll use? Like, I think it's going to be, moving a little bit over the next several years as we continue to reorganize the organization and go in our new directions.
Yeah, I believe it. I want to slow this down.
No, not at all.
Couldn't she put like, if the board feels necessary to add these, and then this way we don't have to go back and change it. If the board felt like it was necessary to add a COO, CF, whatever, then they would have the right to make that. I don't know. Go ahead.
I think that's just inherently the case that you can do. You can amend your bylaws at any point. When they were included, they had specific duties and titles, and those duties were unique to them, meaning it wasn't like they could do this, but the executive director could also do it. It's like they do this, and that's why, since those positions don't exist, that was the idea there. We added some language, and you see like E and F, just adding some verbiage that she thinks based upon Sue's work with other IDAs, just other things that should be touched upon. That we should have policies, not just in personnel, but investments, which we have, travel, property acquisition, procurement, just specifying all of that. Actually, she moved that where that was listed, and then you do some basic deletions in F. Most of these are kind of self-explanatory.
Yeah.
I think for the remainder, I'll have you look at it and please, any question, anything you want to touch on or question, please do.
No, but
And Sue, by the way, was not available. She just had a conflict for this evening. So this is probably the piece I wanted to be here for the most, but she certainly will be with us next Wednesday to answer everything. That's more on the legalese aspect of it.
so we're going to keep the COO and CFO now descriptions in there. At this point?
Where are you with section 8?
Page 8.
Right, CO and
Article 4, Section 2, Chief Operating Officer, Chief Financial Officer. Because we don't have a COO, right?
Correct.
And if the CFO will report to the COO, well, that's not the case. The CFO is going to be reporting to the CEO.
Correct. Just kind of what Dean was talking to about having it in here. Yeah, I want to clarify that piece, exactly what the intention is here.
I mean, I don't mind having these things in there as possibilities, but it should be at the discretion of the board. The board will authorize the CEO to fill, I don't know how it's the right wording, but I don't, we're not committed to a COO yet. We're not committed to having a standalone CFO. We're using a service for that.
In the hierarchy of the whatever that'll be spelled out in maybe the hiring packet to that person.
Yeah.
That this is who you're reporting to. This is who you
Yeah.
report to. It doesn't have to be this maybe.
Yeah.
So so you can adjust that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to work just like that, just
I
because.
don't know if we have to put report to,
I don't know. That's
I mean, that's more of a,
language.
yeah, I don't know if it needs to be in the bylaws. I don't know.
Does the county will have to look at this? Did we change this or no? It's just us.
I don't think so. I mean, we can give them our bylaws. I mean, it'll be a public document once we adopt it.
In my reports to the E&E committee last month, I don't know if you caught this, but I did talk about our revisions, and actually a couple legislators responded and asked that they could have copies of them, so I did share that with them. Of course, in this case, our recapture policy. What else did we do? Revision of local labor policy.
Because this will be on the website.
Of course,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
But because I do report monthly there, these things we talk about some more granular stuff. So yeah. But yeah, my concern with these pieces is that, as I said a few minutes ago, it's talking about specific duties that it says are assigned to them, and if they're not there, so I actually need to clarify that.
This is if you want to have your attorney review it for before
Before we adopt it. Yeah.
Any other questions on the rest of this?
No, I tried reading it on my phone, but it was publishing.
I read through some of it, but not where I was.
Committees. Yeah, no, I like most of it. I just that the CEO, CFO stuff, this should have a little more not ambiguity, it should have more, maybe a little less is more, with regard to that, and more discretion, if applicable, or if decided by the board, or whatever.
Maybe I think it's the word out.
What's the word out? Courtesy. Yeah. Courtesy review by
They want
by
the county before they
county attorney,
before they put
the legislative attorney. There's two different people.
Okay.
But I think we vote on it contingent upon review of, we bring it to the board, agree to whatever we want to agree to, and then subject to review by a courtesy review by county legislature's attorney and the county attorney. They may have some ideas, or they may know, more eyes are better than.
Absolutely.
Well, wouldn't we motion for the changes, and then once the document comes back clean, adopt it? So there would be some time in between them for them to review it,
Or you do subject to a review or further comment. I don't know. I mean, they may pass. They may say, you know what, we don't want to review.
Exactly.
It's fine.
Exactly.
yeah, it's fine, but
All right.
Okay, unless there's any other comments there, the last piece of this, I think is I'm glad it's for last. It's the least time consuming. We've been working with our general counsel to revise our application for incentives, both for OCIDA and OCFC. When we started working with Bousquet Holstein, this is one of the primary changes to it. Sue and her team almost immediately began reviewing our application to see if it was, in their opinion, based upon how they work projects, if it included all the right information, if there's extra questions, whatever the case may be. Well, very early on, Sue determined that the application was deficient of about 6 or 7 questions that she felt needed to be answered that did not exist in our application, and she drafted that into what we call a supplemental application or a supplement to the OCID application. It asked if the project is consistent with general municipal law. Will the cost of the facilities, it asked about retail. Is there a retail component of that? What percentage of the project is that? Is the project located in a distressed census tract? Will any other companies or related facilities within the state close or be subjected to reduced activity as a result of this project? Those were not in our application. It can impact an applicant's worthiness of benefits, and there are a number of other questions like that. Those have now all been integrated into the new application, and basically we streamlined other things. There were some other corrections. I can give you a red line version if you'd like, but it's not overly complicated. It's not even as involved as the bylaws, but it's basically just streamlining it. Again, nothing else of substance. I can make sure you know what all these supplemental questions are that have been added, but it's really adding those, taking out some extra language, and then the last thing that I requested was including a field in there where someone put their NAICS code, the North American Industry Standard Codes. That is something that I use that number. I determine what their NAICS code is on my own when I'm developing the cost benefit analysis. It's actually part of that. But we decided to, hey, let's have the applicant tell us what sector they believe they're in, rather than me kind of searching and checking with them. Those are really the only differences in this, and just cleaning it up, making sure the board names are all right, consultant names, but it's just streamlining and cleaning up and updating our application, and just looking for the board to ratify it so we can start using it going forward.
On page 24, one of the things that I brought up before was that I read and reread the prevailing wage thing.
Yes.
I don't know if prevailing wage is the right term for it. Basically, it's stating that they're acknowledging and agreeing that the financial positions that we provide is considered public funds, okay? And it quotes the different laws and stuff like that. But it's like, I don't know if it should be prevailing wage or public funds, or because it doesn't really go into what prevailing wage is, what isn't. It might be confusing, because we know that these new rules where it's any project over 5 million with 30% of it being paid for through public funds is subject to it. But that's for them to determine if they got the 30%. One of it's over 5 million, and one of what's more than 30%. I think it's 30%. I think it's over 5 million and 30%.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. That to me both conditions.
Yeah. So I don't know if it means prevailing wage there. I think it means definition of public acknowledgement of definition of public funds for long term. We might want to say prevailing wages. It could be subject to prevailing wage underneath these sections of municipal law or something. But
I see exactly what you mean.
You know, I mean,
really, as it says here in this language, we're looking for them to attest to the fact that they understand these are public funds.
Yeah.
And that does play into that question about whether or not it is prevailing wage. But this isn't a section where it's saying you attest that this is subject to prevailing wage, or it's going to trigger it.
Yeah.
No, it's not. You're right.
So I'm not sure what the correct legal language is for it.
Or in that, pardon me, but at the top where it's underlined, it could just say public funds section.
Yeah, and maybe we want to, and could be subject to prevailing wage based upon these, but it's not our determination. We're not the prevailing wage police, at least they haven't forced us to be that yet. That's really Department of Labor, and I think it's going to fall under the New York State Department of Labor.
That's his opinion. So,
Yeah, definitely. And see what other people are doing, but I just don't know if that's the right title or if it. I kind of
It's a
understand it.
nuance, but I
don't think anybody else,
understand.
I don't think other people would understand it.
So if you looked up that section of the law,
Yeah.
pursuant to section, I mean, that's what, they would have to look that up, obviously,
Yeah,
to
right.
determine, and then it would say from there, whatever verbiage they say.
But I follow your thinking exactly, because it's really about them affirming that it's public funds, but you allude to that or refer to that section of GML, which is about prevailing wage.
Yeah.
It's how that fits in. It's how this fits into that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, but
That's a great point.
now, it also falls into, I don't think we need to have it in the application, but we got to be cognizant of it, is that there's certain people out there that think that jobs, the full-time jobs, once it's constructed, need to be local jobs. That's a totally different ballgame and something that we haven't gotten or opined upon, or I don't think we can discriminate against. They can come from anybody. We can't tell an employer who they can employ. I don't think.
And as I've told some recent applicants and companies, or municipal leaders, more so, these companies generally would love to hire all local. I mean, it's only advantageous for them. They just struggle to do that. And in some cases, as you know,
Not that it has to
they're busting employees in here in some cases.
But not that it has to be in our application, but that's something that also has to be in the back of our mind, that we don't confuse, I'll say, our constituents about what our application or what our policies are.
Right.
That's just a side. But I think we need just a little finer wording on this.
Obviously, you said, it says prevailing wage, but then it doesn't say anything about the percentage of 30% of whatever.
Yeah.
You have to go look at the law. So if you look at the law for that, why don't you look at the law for this?
But that's what I'll clarify with her. I think the way I'm reading it, and I think the chairman is as well, I don't think it's spelling out all the specifics of prevailing wage, because it's not really what it's dealing with here. It's saying, understand that these are public funds.
They're classified as public funds.
The reason that matters is because of the GML section 234. And for them to look at it, they see what the context of it, why it matters. But for this purpose, I think her intent is just to say that you understand these are public funds, so that you and every project is subject to this new law, but it only matters if these are public funds and it's in excess of your 30% and all that. It's nuanced, like I said, but I think it makes sense. Now, she may clarify why it needs to be prevailing wage, and she may actually add language to make more sense, but I'm in tune with what you're saying, and I think that makes sense. So
I think that the gentleman from Ulster sent me, now that we talked, that was a while ago, definitely some language they had used.
Okay.
Well, they had a little different policy. Their policy was they had to pay prevailing wage on all projects, and they didn't get no projects for 2 years. Then I think they scaled that back. So they had a local labor policy with prevailing wage requirements. I remember that was a big issue. They were the only ones in the state doing it, and it was.
They've been very active.
And it was. I don't know. I don't think they still do that. I think they encourage it, but I don't think they make it a requirement. But
well, this to me is almost like going back to with the legalese of the bylaws. Excuse me, like you don't spell all of it out, right?
Yeah.
So in here you could almost say, like, he doesn't say 30%.
Yeah.
It doesn't say that doesn't say that you could avoid it by using a PLA or whatever. It doesn't say.
Yeah.
You're not spelling the whole. It's for them to determine.
Yeah, it's for them to determine. You're right.
I don't know.
Anything else on the application?
No, I mean, once we do our UTEP, we may have some, obviously, the fee schedule is part of the application, so those changes have to be made into it.
Absolutely.
Is there anything that we want to like for a project that say is like continuing, right? So they finish, but there's still some
Like phasing?
Yeah,
Maybe,
you know what I'm saying,
subsequent phase.
that we, in other words, I'm not saying even to charge them more, right?
Right.
Saying, but just so we can, maybe they do some sort of thing, at the end, this is the project is finished to this point. However, we know that we can continue, so you're aware of it goes to continue again, or if there's an addition or whatever, I don't know. Maybe it doesn't even matter. But if they have fees that are, or benefits that they haven't used, and then they want to go ahead and use them, you know, they have to notify or something like that. I don't know.
Are you raising this more for the application or really back to the fee
I don't
schedule?
know.
Yeah.
I think it happens is we've had people come back and ask for more, right?
Yeah, maybe to increase the sales tax limit
Or
or something like that.
the time that it's taking because of the supply chain issues or stuff like that. So I think we've seen some of what he's with the install.
I know.
But I don't think we've ever said no. I mean, no, you have to have it all spent by January 1st, so we're not.
No, we've extended that
Yeah.
for sure. We've had a lot of discussion.
Yeah, you have to fund spend more money.
Exactly.
You know, and finish it up or make additional amendments or not amendments, but.
I think you want to know, right? I mean, that's all,
Right.
right? So they stop there with grand, you go there, grand opening, whatever, goes to drive by, put an addition on.
Right.
More, or doing something else that you may not, maybe they just have to notify you that you're.
Are you thinking though that, I mean, I'm thinking they would not tend to know when they're applying, right? That's something that
That's
happens after the fact or,
That's sort of, you know, what I'm saying?
so you're not necessarily saying they should tell us up front. They may not know, but are you saying maybe, and I know you're just kind of spitballing, but suggesting that maybe we consider putting some language in there, letting them know they need to tell us if
I think you'd want to know, right? I mean, if they're.
they don't need to unless they're coming back for additional benefits. They don't necessarily, like if they finish the project, they're done as far as the terms of our, so they don't need to tell us if they added a garage down the road unless they're
No, you should let them know to have the rest of it to apply, right? Whether it's the labor language or. Yeah, and I don't know how the sales tax exemption works, you know, so let's just say they did X, Y, Z, and it would cost maybe, it was a little less, right? They don't, and then they're gonna buy more equipment, whatever with it or not. I mean, would you need to know that for any reason or not? I don't know.
What matters to us is whatever the limit is, the cap to the sales tax exemption, they can't exceed that. And it needs
Well,
to
they can't take the sales tax exemption exceeding it. They could pay more than.
Oh,
exceed it.
absolutely.
They just can't extend.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Whatever the sales tax exemption we award them, that's all they can kind of voucher for, so to speak.
I'm thinking that, like, you know, they don't notify you, or know the labor policy
Yes.
being followed or something like that.
Yeah, I guess my comment was that we care that they don't exceed that limit and that it's all applicable expenditures, which is building supplies, furniture, fixtures, equipment, essentially, so.
And, no, so I'm good with these going to full board for review.
Okay.
The UTEP has our clawback stuff in it, right? It's not standalone?
The clawback is now, it was in the UTEP, but we pulled it out, so we have our own standalone recapture policy. That's what we did last one.
That's what.
And that's what's in there. That's where that is.
Cool.
Anything else for the good before we close?
For quorum now, for committee, three individuals make up a quorum, right? Quorum?
It's a majority of the total number of members, and most of our committees all have 4 members. So in this case, we have a quorum with a majority of 3.
And for the board, 7, for the board will be 5 then, right?
4 being the majority of the 7. So we need we need 4 members at the board level for a quorum and to pass any motion. We've had it before where we had 3, it's just not enough to pass. It may be a majority of the people present, but it's not enough.
Right, that's where you get into, like, if there's 2 people aren't there,
Exactly.
how do you?
All right, anything else on the governance committee?
That's it from the staff.
All right, with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion. All in favor? Aye. Aye.